Okay, let's see here. All right, cool. And we're live. I have a lot to talk about. This is going to be a good stream, I think. I've got lots of links to look at. Um, Hopefully, we don't get kicked off by any powers that be, and we can talk about some fascinating topics. I have been really looking at a lot of the statements and claims made by some of the more serious people in the UFO world. Thinking a lot about it, as it regards to my work, obviously, I talked about it many times. Looking at the supposed, report claims that are supposed to come out in the report that's coming out. Doesn't appear like it will be anything interesting. Basically, exactly as I expected, more and more over time, especially that they're not going to tell us anything, and that's to be expected. But I was involved in some Clubhouse discussions lately, including last night, that I want to talk more about today. I know I reported that there will be a schedule change. I will not be doing this on Monday nights anymore. I will be either on Instagram or on Clubhouse, depending on how things go, but at least a little bit on Instagram on Monday nights, taking live questions from people who want to come in and speak to me on video. I took my first live question last night. I wasn't going to do it. And then this guy just got me at the right moment, I guess. And I let him in. And it was actually a great discussion. There was some amazing synchronicities for anybody that watched that. It was a guy from. He was like, "I'm from Africa." I was like, "Where from Africa?" He was like, "Nigeria." I was like, "Well, my fiance's from family's from Nigeria," and he was like, "Well, what's her name? I'll tell you. I want to know what tribe she's from." And I was like, "She's Igbo," and I knew he was gonna be Igbo. And it just, if you follow my work and you know what I've said about dispersers, it is amazing how predictive my work is in its ability to make consistently accurate predictions across fields that also are very relevant to human behavior and human groupings. And of course, he was Igbo, and what are the odds? Probably not maybe 100%, but close to it, if not 100%. And there are patterns at play here that are not understood by modern sociologists, modern geneticists, modern uh, academia in general. And so, but it is fascinating that it lined up perfectly, exactly with my work and my claims. It was very cool. But I'm going to be doing that more often. That was awesome. So Mondays, if you want to have a face-to-face discussion with me outside of our private Discord conversations that happen on Thursdays at 7 p.m., probably around 9 p.m., I will be on Instagram and be discussing things with people live. So feel free to, send me a request on Theory of Everyone on Instagram to get into those talks. But hit the like button if you are currently watching. It really helps with the algorithm. I have definitely noticed that some things have been being messed with in these algorithms, and it was my job at my previous job, and probably will be at my current job as well, to understand, or to at least be able to recognize when algorithms were being used or when being messed with in order to suppress information, censor certain viewpoints, things like that. And it's I mean, my work has been presented to Congress on that. So like, and it was sworn as accurate by Google in court, and that we were suing them at the time. So I know what's going on. So definitely go to sentientsingularity.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and sign up for my email list if you want to be able to continue my work across the various platforms that we will eventually probably get kicked off until, we create our own, which is in the works. So thank you all for the likes. I see that. Very cool. It's not something that I really pay much attention to or care about, but I do know that it helps with the algorithm. I just care that people are finding this work valuable. If I was in this for vanity metrics, there are plenty of other things to be talking about than the things that I talk about. But you would not be so nuanced, or not even nuanced, but just not taking the path that is the rah-rah path, I guess. And or you don't espouse responsibility and the necessity of embracing it if you want rah-rah likes. That's for sure. So I've been following some pages recently and have been monitoring some discussions on the UFO phenomenon. I was participating in another clubhouse last night on it as well. And I've really been diving into, why do we see the censorship of this topic in the way that we do? And who are the people who are the legitimate, sane voices to listen to? Because that's something that I'm new to this on. Other than Bob Lazar, I don't really know who is a sane voice other than what I've seen recently that's new. My nose is itching. But one of the people that I've been really following lately, as I've said, Richard Dolan, that guy definitely knows what's up. And I would love to get him on here eventually. He understands the media quite well, and how disinformation works. And it was very interesting. I was having a Clubhouse discussion last night with this guy who goes by Data on Clubhouse, and his job, he's the 8th top hacker in the world around that, at least. I mean, who really knows whether or not you're 8th or 14th or 10th or whatever? It doesn't really matter. If you're in the top 100 hackers and you're employed by alphabet agencies to suppress information, which is what he is employed to do, then you are quite good at hacking. So Sky Data on Clubhouse, you can find him yourself as well. His job is to suppress information for the various agencies and corporations. And he also is very open about what his job is. He doesn't talk about what exactly it is that he suppresses, but he hints at things, which, that's about as much as you can do. I appreciate that. And but last night I was in a discussion with them and discussing who is really in charge of disclosure. And Eric Weinstein was involved in the discussion too, again last night. And he was basically saying, as he has said before, that it's ridiculous to think that the corporations are suppressing this. He thinks we should be focusing on government. Other people are saying that it's, the military-industrial complex. And I kind of think that both of those are true. I think that, it started with the government probably, and then it became military-industrial complex. But what is it now? And I had mentioned there is a head of Israeli space agency for quite some time, was Chaim Mashed. And Chaim Mashed, if anybody would know, Chaim Mashed would know, the most classified information on this topic. He had claimed that the United States government had a treaty with another civilization to conduct science and probably also in secrecy. Why would you want to do science in public here? If you can maintain secrecy on it, you would probably want to do so. And I basically had asked is it possible, if that's true, and he's not the only one that has said that. Bob Lazar said that he was told that. Other people who have been whistleblowers on this have said that. I'm not saying it's true, I'm just saying that's what's been said. And if that is true, though, I don't think that we are in charge of what is allowed to be discussed on this topic. I don't see why we would. Why are we in charge of that? We're probably not. And it's very interesting. There's quite some claims by everybody across this field. Richard Dolan. I've listened to Stephen Greer for the first time today who's actually on Logan Paul's podcast, and I listened to that. Stephen Greer is an interesting guy. That's all. I mean, he's very interesting. I will say, in some ways, I understand why people think he is kind of like comes off as like a culty, like personality guru wannabe. I don't think that he really necessarily. I understand why he comes off that way. I don't know if that's his goal, but I will say that he knew quite a bit, and we're going to look at what he said because it lines up perfectly with my work, and I can't really deny that. It's kind of amazing. So, Eric Weinstein was on a Clubhouse discussion with me the other day and with a few other people, and Eric had said, he said, there's nobody tinkering in physics, which is BS, and he knows it because he's had discussions with you could say he's a physics tinkerer. He has no degree in physics. He's a mathematician. But at the same time, you look at, Stephen Wolfram. Stephen Wolfram does have a physics degree, but his tinkering is in applying computer science to his work. It's very much tinkering type of work. And Eric said that he understands how tinkering could lead to breakthroughs in biology and engineering and every other field, but not in physics, and he didn't think that it was possible. And I responded to him and said, well, actually, as a physics tinkerer myself, I totally disagree with you. And I said that everybody who's leading the field right now is a physics tinkerer. You look at whether they have a degree in physics or not. You look at Garrett Lisi's work, that's definitely, I would describe that as tinkering, applying things to E8 structures. I mean, that's tinkering. That's totally new, and it's very simple in a weird way. I mean, his theory, his paper that I have, right here is an exceptionally simple theory of everything. It's like, that's called tinkering. You look at Stephen Wolfram's work, like I said, he does it in a totally like computer science-y way, which is an engineering thing, and much more close to engineering, which is, I think, the way of going with this. And that was, it's tinkering. And so I told him that I need to get a new chair eventually. I don't even know where this thing is from. It's from, I got it from an old roommate of mine. They was part of a movie set. But I left it out in the rain. It's falling apart. But regardless, I said to him that, I'm tinkering in physics. I've made quite a number of breakthroughs, and I'm seeing everybody else tinkering, including him. And I think that the tinkerers are making quite a bit of progress, and they are the only people making progress. And he said that it's ridiculous to think that our government isn't going to any of the leading physicists in the world that he knows to work on these problems of how do you do warp transportation and such, the things that are supposedly claimed. And he was responding to something that I had said earlier, where Ben Rich, who was the head of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, had said, the things that we have in the desert would make George Lucas jealous. He said, if you've seen it in a sci-fi, in Star Trek and Star Wars, we've been there, done that. We already have the technology to travel among the stars. But this technology is wrapped up in black projects so tightly that it will not see the light of day for quite some time. And he said that before, and when he was giving an alumni speech to engineering, the School of Engineering at UCLA, I think, in the 90s. So I referenced it. Eric was responding to that and saying that he thought that was kind of ridiculous because the idea that the government has this technology and physics in academia has no idea how this would even be done, he thought was ridiculous. And I said that, I was listening to Stephen Wolfram, and Stephen Wolfram said that basically warp transportation, if it's approached from the way that his work would suggest, which is utilizing entanglement substructures of the universe, the scaffolding of the universe, quantum entanglement, you could make jumps, basically, like Jumper, across distance. And I had independently come to this as well. I'm not saying I know how to do it, or not saying he knows how to do it. I know Robert Grant's also looked into it a bit. People have made some progress. The people that I speak to, Robert Grant is onto something. He's talked about using mod 9 resonance frequencies. That makes sense with my quantum of consciousness model, that it would be mod 9. But you're utilizing quantum entanglement. And I had said this to Eric Weinstein, and he didn't really want to respond to it, but who knows why. I'm not going to get too into it. That's, I'd have to insinuate his motives. But that was Stephen Wolfram's conclusion essentially as well. And Stephen Wolfram said verbatim, he said, if that's true of warp transportation and what his work would suggest, it turns it just into an engineering problem. It's not even that complicated. And I was watching Project Blue Book with Paulina the other day, and there's this part where Wernher von Braun, the guy who created the V2 rocket, is simultaneously designing the Saturn V rocket to take us to the moon, as he's also had built this, mock-up, reverse-engineered, flying saucer that is capable of just like jumping. And it shows it. And so basically they've got this classified ship and this not classified ship, and they're showing us the not classified ship, and they're not showing us the classified ship. And I've started to think that I was listening to Graham Hancock, and he was talking about, technologies and how he thought that previous civilizations potentially did not use plastics or petroleum, things like that, so heavily like we do, and that they had a different type of technology. And I think that he's right. I think our technology is purposely being suppressed. And when I was listening to, and that we do simultaneously have the ability in super secret black projects to do things that we think of as magic right now. And that is due to actually those projects having a very deep understanding of physics that is very close to my work. And this is what's hard for me, is I look at people like Stephen Greer, and I'm like, I get he sounds kind of culty, but then he says things like what I heard him say today, and I'm going to show you the clip, that are perfectly in line with my work. And if you have to take him seriously at that point. And he says it so matter-of-factly, and people think that I'm a fraud all the time, and I know what that's like, so I've seen that side of it, of just, I'll say like, well, this is what a consciousness is. People will be like, well, you can't know that. It's like, well, I did 5 years of work on it. I think that I can know it, otherwise I wouldn't say it. And he says things like that too, and people think that it makes... I see the way people react to him, and it's kind of similar. I'm not, fully on board with everything that he's said, but I definitely will say that a lot of what he said came off as very true, and it's most of what he says is echoed by people like Richard Dolan and many other people in this field, Bob Lazar. So let's look at some clips, because if you're familiar with my work, you will see why this is very interesting. I also listened to another conversation with Jack Valet today on Kurt, oh my gosh, I forgot his last name's channel, Theories of Everything. I'm going to show you some clips from that as well, because he's very correct as well on some of this stuff. I have no idea what these UFOs are. I think that it makes more sense that this is... at least some of these are descendants of humans from this civilization, or from a previous civilization on Earth. But, I can't know that right now. But I can speak to the physics of it quite a bit, because I've made quite a bit of progress on this physics. and starting to think that it isn't impossible to simultaneously, especially, and I mentioned this to Eric Weinstein, that it is an engineering problem, especially if you are reverse engineering technology that you have found. And I think that's probably why he didn't want to get into it with me, because he hasn't gone there yet, even though it's like the New York Times said that, there are metamaterials being studied by Bigelow Aerospace. Where did the metamaterials come from? Crashes? Probably. Not even probably. Almost certainly, if they're real. And so if you're going to acknowledge the rest of the things from the New York Times, or at least the videos and their validity of something that's not known currently, then you also have to kind of acknowledge that part of it too. But I get it. If you have millions of followers and you're trying to come out with a theory of everything, you have to ease into this. And I mean, I've had other conversations with Eric before about the implications of his work that would never be accepted. I mean, they were rejected when he revealed them at first, in violently almost, by MIT and Harvard in his thesis. But now I get he's trying to woo the scientific community that is literally, it's amazing how lost they are. They are literally the worst conspiracy theorists, if there ever is such a thing, in a negative sense, that exist. They believe nothing, almost nothing true. It's like some of us are thinkers and also often wrong sometimes, because that's thinking involves testing and embracing and going down paths and things like that. And that also involves sometimes being wrong. But then there's also this side of it where you're just a memorizer of information, probably out of context. And I think that this is basically what constitutes the majority of the scientific community. And definitely, and not even, I don't think it, I know it, Eric Weinstein also had said that, I think it was Albert Einstein had said there's 3 types of people in science, and one of them is the innovators, and those people are always thought of as insane, and nobody understands how they do it other than other people that do it, that type of work. And then there's the people that test things, and then there's the people that just distribute and know facts that they think they understand but they don't. And these are the 3 steps of science, and you kind of have to embrace all of them, even though it's very frustrating to do so. But it's certainly, I do understand the point of it. God is plan. But regardless, look at this. So this is also what is said in Clea Irwin's work, also tinkering, Eric Weinstein's work, I think Wolfram's work, definitely my work, definitely Eric Weinstein's work, that basically we are also Robert Grant. We're inside of a quantum computer. That is an inevitability. And that it's likely that it's running, it's a technological quantum computer running on the previous aeon, essentially. And essentially is the previous aeon, or verse as I call it. Or universe, you could call it, but it's not really the universe because that it's one, but it's a verse, and that we are essentially artificial intelligence. I mean, not even we are artificial intelligence in a quantum computer, and you are an algorithm, like you are, and it says it in the Bible. Let us create man in our image. It is the assembly of mankind in the previous aeon speaking to itself as one hive mind type of thing. And it's saying, it says it in Genesis, let us, plural, create man in our image. That's what it is. And it's probably a superposition of many things, but that's at least partially what it is. Stephen Greer said this. Can't deny, that's pretty profound. So this is what he said. And I bookmarked all these, so we shouldn't have any difficult time finding them.
And the physicists have figured out that
Okay, let's just let the
even though our individuality is different, that the field of
freaking ads, man.
Hi there, welcome to Forward. Come on in. I'm Dr. Nate Favini.
Okay, here we go.
field of consciousness is a singularity. That is.
Here.
Oh,
No. It's about the science of consciousness.
Oh, okay.
So think about it. All of us are awake. And the physicists have figured out that even though our individualities are different, that the field of consciousness is a singularity. That is the singularity everyone's looking for in AI. So this has been known for years and years and years in classified projects, and that's why the CIA had a big program using consciousness to spy on the Soviet Union, sort of like, psychic spies. But what we're doing is that we're using consciousness and in the meditative.
Okay, so I have to take that seriously. Like, I have to take at least quite a bit of what he says now seriously, because that is correct. That's correct with my work. It's also, by the way, correct with geometric unit. As Eric has said publicly many times. So it's funny, Nate Night Talks, who's the guy who organizes these talks in Clubhouse that I've been getting into, and that Eric and other physicists, Brian Keating, were jumping into. Like, he is trying to organize a talk between Stephen Greer and Eric Weinstein. If that happens, my jaw would drop. I doubt that will happen. But, we'll see. I mean, stranger things have happened, but that would be outstandingly odd. Stephen Greer is a little too on the side of what most people would call woo, even though I hate that term. I think it's wrong. At least that is the perception of him that I think Eric would probably avoid. But that is exactly the theory of geometric unity. And it's exactly the theory of sentient singularity theory. It's also the theory of tons of people's work. I was speaking to Robert Grant once on just a private conversation, and this was quite a while ago. And we were speaking on like Skype call. He was like, physics is about. This was the first time that I had like an in-depth conversation with him, and he was like, physics is about to realize that we are inside of a quantum computer. And I was like, I know. And like we talked about it a little bit, but I mean, it appears like, if Stephen Greer is correct, this has been known for quite some time. And if that's the case, it makes perfect sense that they were able to make craft that could jump through entanglement space decades ago. And it also makes some sense that they would want to keep it secret. And that also these beings, whatever they are, proto-humans, ETs, whatever, doesn't matter, would want to keep it secret. Because if you can jump through space-time, then you can deliver a nuke and get back like that. Like, you are basically able to do anything. And I mean, we're getting to this point now with even the speeds of, hypersonic missiles and stuff like that are basically almost impossible to stop. But Stephen Greer had said, and I'm going to play more clips from this, that basically a lot of these craft are actually the United States government, or at least this secret sect of it. And I don't disbelieve him. Like, I think that it's much more likely that our science has split. And, Richard Dolan talks about this. The more I'm delving into this, it's not aliens that are amazing me. It is the idea that we literally seem to have a breakaway civilization. And it might be very small. It might be a few people. I mean, not a few people, but a few, 1,000 people. But if there are people who are aware that we have warp transportation and use it, and there are people who are involved in what they're calling a secret space program, Nate of Nate Night Talks was speaking about this last night. Richard Dolan speaks about this. Stephen Greer speaks about this. They're all basically saying, and so did Chaim Ashed, said there are bases on Mars underground, where we are now doing science. And I don't know if that's true, but it might be. And if that's true, though, this is the greatest revelation of this, not whether or not there's aliens or even whether or not there was a civilization here before us. It is the fact that our civilization is diverging scientifically, and that some of us the majority of us are being regulated to fossil fuels and rockets, and the rest, and then very few of us have craft that are pulling energy from the vacuum, essentially, which is what Stephen Greer was saying. He said all of these things are just pulling energy from the vacuum. He said he believes that, he was asked by Logan Paul, do you believe Bob Lazar? And he said Bob Lazar, he believes Bob Lazar worked where he said, saw things that he said, but thinks that he's wrong on physics, and that he thinks that it's more likely these things are pulling energy from the vacuum. I agree with that, I think. Which essentially is, it's almost, it's like free energy, and this is why I'm saying go to sentientsingularity.com. It's at the bottom of the homepage, and sign up for my email list, because I think that if this is true, this is being very suppressed. And Stephen Greer said it was for the sake of profit, oil companies and things like that, and military-industrial complex. Nate last night said that basically Eisenhower, I think, was trying to get into Area 51, and he was denied access, and then he threatened to march troops on it, and then they let him in, and then he gave his speech of like, the military-industrial complex is out of control and accountable to no one after that. And maybe, that guy, Nate, appears to know his stuff. From what I know, he knew it all, and more. And Nikola Tesla's work was totally confiscated when he died. He, this brings a lot of validity to, like, potentially, or seriousness, I'll say, to the potentiality of the things like the Philadelphia experiment. That's basically, seems like they tried warp transportation. If that actually happened, that's probably what it was. And this is the most interesting part of this. It lines up, though, with the work of people, and the hypotheses of people like Graham Hancock, who said that he thinks the previous civilization had a different kind of science. Nate last night said, and I don't know where he's getting this information, but I've heard rumors of this stuff as well. Obviously, he said that they had discovered that basically a lot of artifacts and craft were discovered in archaeological digs in places like Egypt and Antarctica. I think stuff is going on in Antarctica. I really do. That's like, this is the most fascinating thing, is like what science is being kept from us by our own civilization, not by another. I mean, even if it is another that's in charge of this, what are members of our civilization? What do they know? What do they have? And, I do wonder, though, is it really a good thing? Maybe it is a good thing that we're not being given this technology. Like, that is a serious thing that you have to ask yourself. It's like, everybody's like, well, they're suppressing free energy and they're suppressing warp transportation, and, we need to get it out there because it's our right. And it's like, maybe, we should be working to get it out there now at this point, but maybe it should not have been fully available, because maybe that's what led to the downfall of the previous one. It's like, if nobody's controllable at all in any way, which they don't have as much control as they think, but I think there's more control than there was in the previous civilization. Much more. Probably by holdovers from the previous civilization. Maybe that's necessary to stop us from destroying ourselves. I mean, there were articles, and it was reported by multiple sources in I think it was the 50s, that uranium mines in Africa were being buzzed by UFOs. It's like, why are they at uranium mines? Why did they crash in New Mexico like 3 times that I'm aware of? At least stories, Roswell, Aztec, New Mexico, Roswell, New Mexico, Aztec, New Mexico, and then also a previous crash that they discussed. I think it was a previous crash that was not Aztec, on Kurt's channel, with Jack Valet. We're going to look at some clips. This is because, Roswell had the Air Force Base that had the bomber squadron that dropped the nukes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They were the bomber squadron tasked with dropping nukes, if anybody dropped nukes at the time. So there's definitely this connection between these craft and our tech. And it does seem like they are trying to stop us from destroying ourselves, even if it means controlling us. And, I was in my video, Science of the Messiah, that I did years ago, I said it's practically miraculous that we have not had more catastrophes as far as, weapons of mass destruction. And now we're seeing this totally different narrative change where things are getting a little bit more public again with UFO stuff. And the thing is it's already been like this in the past, but it was decades and decades and decades ago, and nobody now who's interested in it now was really alive then, except, very few. And so they don't remember it. They were very open. There are photos online of craft above the Capitol. The Capitol! Confirmed! Like, this was in every paper and everybody saw it. I'm going to show it to you. Like, now I'm not saying I know what these are. Not saying anybody does. I'm just saying this is real. These are real photos of something that was seen by thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And by the way, I was alive during the Phoenix Lights, so it was a very similar situation. And I'm from Tucson. And I'm also going to show a photo that Stephen Greer says is a photo of an alien. So we'll look at that, stick around. And it does kind of look like a lot of people weren't impressed by it. I was a little more impressed by it, honestly, than I think most people were. But UFOs, Washington, D.C., 1952. I think it was 1952. Let's see here. Screen share. Okay, 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident. The 1952 D.C. UFO incident, also known as Washington Flap, Washington National Airport sightings, or the invasion of Washington, was a series of unidentified flying objects reported from July 12th through July 29th, 1952 over Washington, D.C. The most publicized sightings took place on consecutive weekends, July 19th and 20th, and July 26th and 27th. It was the highest number of reports for Project Blue Book. So this is a photo. This is a photo. Here's a photo. Here's a photo. Like, this is not flares. And it's not fighter jets. This is exactly what the Phoenix Lights look like. Phoenix Lights. And I know people that saw the Phoenix Lights. These things flew around and hovered for hours. And the military had no explanation. And then they were like, it's flares, way later. But it's like, flares do not sit in the sky for hours. They don't. And everybody knows it. Like, look at them. You're telling me that's flares? No, it's not. They're taking us for fools, and we're being fools. That's why they're taking us for fools, because we are being fools. I'm not saying I know what this is. I'm just saying it is a phenomenon that is real and happening, and not fighter jets or flares. It's not. I mean, these are photos from 1950. Look, I mean, that's crazy. Okay, look at this. I'm gonna say this. I'll show this as well. This was New York City in 1990s. New York. Let's see this. YouTube. We're gonna get off of that. Get off of that. Get off of that. Look at this. This is CBS News, by the way, just so you know. So, you can't really claim that this is incredible, even though CBS is not very, I mean, this is mainstream news. It's not credible, but this was a home video in the 1990s. Or this was 2010, actually. It is when this was uploaded. It might not have been the 90s. I don't know if this was filmed when this was filmed, but oh crap. Let's go here. What is that? We can listen to the people talking who are videotaping this. I mean, there's hundreds or thousands of people watching these things. They're flying in sync. This video is 8 minutes long, okay? These are not flares. Sitting in the sky, dancing around each other for 8 minutes over New York City, Manhattan. I mean, look at how many people saw this. Watch this. Look at this. It's not probably Brooklyn or Queens, actually. We can look up where Dallas Barbecue is. We'll know exactly where this was. Literally, there's people talking. They're like, I gotta get to work. I want to watch this. It's like, and CBS gives no commentary on it, which makes me think it's more real. Otherwise, they would try and spin this. That is real UFOs. I don't know where they're from. It could be our government built them. Could be from Tesla Tech. It could be holdovers from a pre-flood Atlantis type civilization. It could be, extraterrestrials from Zeta Reticuli. I'm not claiming to know, but I'm claiming that is not tech that we are supposed to know about. It looks exactly like the Phoenix Lights. It looks exactly like what was over the Capitol in the 1950s. What's interesting is that, when I wrote my paper in middle school, it was in 8th grade, I wrote that the government was morally obligated to tell us about the existence of extraterrestrials if they knew. And I do still think that, even if they can't tell us about the tech because of whatever reasons, if they can't, make the tech public, but they would be morally obligated to tell us about the existence of them, I think. My teacher said this is why she was trying to convince me not to write the paper and to choose a different topic. And I was supposed, it was a paper where you're supposed to advocate for a moral, stance on something. And I wrote it on Bob Lazar and all this stuff. And it wasn't making the claim that they existed, it was just making the claim that if it existed, the government was morally obligated to tell us. And she was saying, the reason why she thinks that it's fake is because if the UFOs existed, they would be so advanced they would not need lights. I don't think that these lights that we see are used for seeing their way around flying. I think that the science, the physics of how these things are moving is utilizing electromagnetism, essentially. Because electromagnetism and the strong nuclear force and gravity and radiation, which is, the weak force, which is decay, essentially, which is radiation, essentially. These are the same force. These four forces are inside, outside, separate, and oneness. It's gravity is oneness. We have the strong nuclear force. Then you have electromagnetism, and you have the weak force. I would say the weak force is probably separateness. The nuclear force is inside, and outside would be maybe actually the weak force, and then electromagnetism would be inside, probably. So look at this, actually. I have to be careful getting these close to my computer, but I got these today. My gosh. These are magnets that I'm using to build. I really have to take these away from my computer. I'm using them to attach a misting system to the side of my gecko cages so that I don't have to silicone the misting nozzles to the inside of the cage, because then I have to remove all the geckos because the fumes are toxic. Instead, I'm going to do it all outside, and then I'm just going to magnet them on. But these are neodymium magnets. They're only like $20 on Amazon. These things are so incredibly strong that I cannot physically break them apart from each other. And I'm strong. Like, I'm small, but I'm very strong. I cannot do it. I cannot pull these apart. I can slide them apart. But they are so strong. You can see how strong this is pulling. They have like little spacers in between them so that they don't smash into each other. And I'm trying to be very careful. These are the strongest magnets I've ever felt in my life. I can't believe they were only $20. This is legitimately, I know that people say super strong magnets can be dangerous, and I've known that that's obviously true to a certain point, at a certain point of strength. But I've never actually experienced magnets that I ever thought were dangerous. I think these can be dangerous. I've been so careful about getting these away from my computer. They're literally grabbing on to, look at that. It's crazy. They're so strong. Do you see that? Oh my gosh, it's like pulling on this. Watch this. It's crazy how strong these things are. This looks like magic. We kind of underestimate, and it's kind of underwhelming how amazing magnets are. Literally is like magic. It's like you can move things without touching them. And people think that it's, nonsense that this technology could exist that does things that look magical. But it's think about just the mundaneness of magnets, but also the profoundness of magnets. They literally are like magic. But there is no such thing as magic, or everything is magic, dependent upon your perspective. Oh my god. I hope that didn't break the magnets. I'm sticking them to a lamp over there. I think that they're glowing because of the energy that's being emitted essentially as light. in certain instances by whatever is the propulsion system being used. So we're going to look at a few more clips because some of these are just profound. And then we're going to look at my models, some of my models on this. So this was, interestingly enough, I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and this is Stephen Greer talking about where he saw this alien that I'm about to show you. There.
Is he seated though?
Okay.
He's sitting.
So this is a photo by actually a famous filmmaker they took it while he was supposedly with Stephen Greer on one of these like things where they go out into the desert and try and like summon ETs with meditation and stuff, which honestly I think that if you believe in the law of attraction or anything, like, you cannot, if you believe consciousness is fundamental, you can't deny that this is possible. Okay, it might sound crazy, it does sound crazy, I get it. I'm not somebody who like, and I'm also not somebody that's like, I want to believe like, oh, they're here to help us, like, want to communicate with ETs. If I ever see, I mean, one day I'll talk about some things that are personal experiences of mine potentially with this, but like, all I will say, and like, I've not been abducted or anything like that as far as I know, like, if I was, if any of us were, usually you wouldn't remember it. Some people do, supposedly, but I have never had that experience. But I've had an experience that was weird, and I don't want to really talk about it right now, but it was not pleasant. Okay, so like, I would freak out if I saw an alien, like, freak out, or whatever they are, proto-humans. It doesn't matter. I would freak out. I'm not somebody that wants to believe I don't want to believe. But this was, he said, this is basically like a space-time bubble. This is why it looks all grainy, is because they basically turned up the brightness on this photo because it was taken in almost pitch black to such a degree that basically it just looks like this. And by the way, if you are a photographer, you know that this is exactly what happens when you turn up the brightness on a photo that's very, very dark. Maybe we'll even do it during the stream and I'll show you. But I'm a photographer, even professionally, at certain points in my life. I've been a wedding photographer. And actually, like, let me see. Let's see here. Maybe I have some. Nope, I don't. Maybe I'll show you later. But here.
ET was standing.
Is that his arm right there?
Yeah,
the
and
black
you see
space?
it looks like a tunic draped there, and then his head is partially in that pixelated area.
Did you zoom in?
So it's and yeah, you can see the eye on the left. Yeah, and you can see it's almost like a beak on the front.
Yes.
And this is an actual unretouched photograph. So
Other than the brightness being turned up, he said.
we have a lot of objects like this, and people think, oh, is this really happening? There's a group of people already making contact with you. I said, well, yeah, why not?
So he did surgery on him, right? Kind of, in a way.
Stephen Greer claims that this ET, essentially, or whatever it is, like, healed a man's hearing that was there with them, who had been basically deaf his entire life, and now is not. Which, honestly, who knows? I'm not saying I believe. I'm just saying, I'm not going to be like, that's BS. I wasn't there. This is what it really means to be scientifically, closest thing to scientifically agnostic is like, I don't know, but I admit that it's possible.
What people today would call it the electromagnetic energy surgery. In other words, it was anything.
By the way, I know people that I'm not gonna say their names right now because I don't think that I know people who are professionals in the medical field who also are involved in the consciousness and physics world, who have filed patents on technology like that. We're using sound waves to make changes to DNA. So, and I know that for a fact. So I'm saying that they've used it successfully or anything. I'm saying people very serious who have launched, other medical products in the past that I know have filed patents for that type of technology already.
But he had a hearing loss since he was a teenage.
So if we got access to this technology, would we cure every disease? Would we cure sickness?
Yes.
We would cure bad genetics.
Yes.
Everything would be cured.
I think we found it.
We found a full color image.
There's that guy in the blue man group.
That's very funny. But I gotta give Logan Paul credit for, first of all, I'm not like a Logan Paul fan or anything. I don't watch any of his podcasts unless it's with somebody like Eric Weinstein or Stephen Greer now, or the guy who made the documentary The Phenomenon. I don't even think I watched Ben Shapiro on there, and I worked with him at the time, and I still didn't watch it. Like, I don't follow his work, but his podcasts with any kind of regularity. But the fact that he's had Eric Weinstein on, and had Stephen Greer on, and had some of these more like fringe but also intellectually pursuing people on his show, gotta give him credit. Also for lasting 8 rounds against like one of the best boxers ever. Okay, Floyd Mayweather is one of the best boxers ever. I mean, if you're a fighter, like I've done martial arts for 20 years, Floyd Mayweather is, I mean, he's incredible. He's so good at evading being hit. I've never seen anybody so good at it. I mean, I've watched Muhammad Ali. Mike Tyson didn't really worry about it. He worried about hitting the other guy. He was like the opposite of Floyd Mayweather. But Floyd Mayweather, like, he doesn't really worry about knocking out the guy. He just worries about not being knocked out. And like, he is better at it than anyone. And Logan Paul is 35 pounds on Floyd Mayweather. But Floyd Mayweather is the best boxer in the world. You got to give both those guys credit for, like, size does matter in fight. And so for Floyd Mayweather to be so confident, or at least paid enough, but also confident, I don't think Floyd Mayweather would go into that fight unless he was really confident he was going to win, or not be knocked out. And to be that confident in your skill against somebody who, even though they aren't a professional fighter, is in quite good shape, and is 35 pounds heavier than you and quite a bit taller, is, I mean, that's pretty amazing. Like, I saw Joe Rogan said that, and I totally agree with him 100%. Like, as somebody that's been a martial artist almost all my life, like, that's exactly what Joe Rogan's statement was on Instagram about it was exactly true. I agree with it completely. I give that guy credit, both of them. But also for having people like Stephen Greer and Eric Weinstein on his podcast, which is, not, I would imagine, not normally a very serious podcast. Like I said, I don't follow it, but I don't think that it's not Lex Friedman or like, Kurt from Theories of Everything. It's certainly less serious. It's funny though, like they were like making tons of jokes, and Stephen Greer is like, okay, let's bring it back or something, and like the whole place went silent, and they were just like, it's the most awkward moment. I was like feeling the cringe, as I guess you could say, like, and then they were like, well, we can have fun, and like, if you're gonna, it was just funny. That's it. I recommend watching the interview. But here, let's see. Religion is the prequel. Sci-fi is the sequel. Religion and sci-fi are the same. The Bible is about mankind's interaction with technology. Okay? When you listen, or you read the Bible, and you're listening to you're reading Revelation, Revelation, stingers. And you read Revelation 9:10, and you're like, I mean, it's not even just 9:10. Let's go. Listen to this. This is the grown-up version of the Bible. Okay? Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. Oh, hold on. I'm letting you see what I'm seeing. Okay. They had breastplates, like breastplates of iron, like made of metal. And the sound of their wings was like thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. So they were very loud, and they fly. And they're made of metal. They have tails like stingers, like a scorpion, and the tails had the power to torment people for 5 months. Okay. You know what this is? It's talking about this. That's what this is talking about. Right here.
Customer to kill half a city. The bad half. Nuclear is obsolete. Take out your entire enemy, virtually risk-free. Just release the swarm and rest easy. These are available today. We have a distribution network taking orders from You can target an evil ideology.
Okay. Look at this.
Where it's.
Have you ever seen this? Drone's TED Talk. Look at this. This was amazing. Okay.
Using this pointer, made out of reflective markers, I can point to where I want the quad to be in space, a fixed distance away from me.
By the way, a drone is very loud. It's just they've quieted it down for the sake of the audio. It's balancing that stick on top of it. It's not attached. It's balancing it. Just like balance.
The key to these acrobatic maneuvers is algorithms, designed with the help of mathematical models and control theory. Let's tell the quad to come back here and let the pole drop, and I will next demonstrate the importance.
So these drones are discussed in Revelation. Like, they're not, this is not fairy tale. It's not science fiction either. It's science fact. Look at this. That's a $40,000 little tiny helicopter that the military has. And, I mean, this is what it's talking about. Breastplates like iron, wings that are super loud, and like, it's talking about drones, guys. I really need to get faster internet. I'm working on it, by the way. Okay. Let's see. Let's get back to some more of the physics. Okay. So this is more clips that are interesting this is him talking about tech.
You know that cool experiment they did where they took a photon and split it in half. So they had two, and then they had two identical photons that had been one. And in CERN in Geneva, and they separated by 14 miles. And then they kind of moved one, and the other one at the same instant with no time lag moved. So it turns out that the whole cosmos and all of us in it, through consciousness and what's called non-locality in physics, are interconnected. That's the secret of how these interstellar civilizations are traveling and communicating.
Yep. Exactly, guys. Exactly. I said this to Eric Weinstein. He didn't answer me because, I don't know, maybe I said something accurate and that he doesn't want to get into it. He wants to go read sentientsingularity.com. See if I'm serious. But that is exactly true. That is how they are traveling. Let me know, by the way, in the chat if you are getting a smooth stream, because it's saying that it's not maintaining a smooth stream. Just let me know if you are getting it, because sometimes YouTube is not accurate in telling me things. So I think I am, though. I'm monitoring it on my phone as well, because I want to make sure that if they kick me off, I see it. But his physics are spot on. They're spot on. This is why I have to take this guy much more seriously now. When he's like, this is a photo of an ET, and it's like, as a photographer, I can tell it looks exactly like what he says. They just upped the brightness because it was taken in almost pure darkness, and it basically came in through a space-time bubble. Like, I don't know, maybe he's lying, but I've seen what happens when you know exactly what you're talking about, and people think that you're full of shit. And it looks exactly like how people treat him. The video was slightly choppy, but the audio seems to be better now. Good. I have to take that guy seriously. That doesn't mean I believe everything he says, but what I do, I can't prove what he says to have seen. I wasn't there. But what I do know regarding my work about how the cosmos works, how warp transportation or jump transportation, whatever you want to call it, or jump, entanglement transportation, entanglement communication would be performed, is exactly what my physics has suggested and what I've thought for years. Even before I got really serious into this, I knew exactly how you would do communication across distances that radio waves don't allow for. Like Mars. You can't have a Skype call with people on Mars with radio waves. It's like people are like, the SETI Institute has been looking for radio waves from other civilizations and found nothing. Why? I mean, why would they? Why would they? I don't think they would. But, that's not how you're communicating if you are maneuvering. If you're more advanced than us, you're not using radio waves to communicate anymore. Like, you're using entanglement. And people will say things like, you can't use entanglement because there's unpredictability of it, and, it's you don't know the state of things, and therefore you can't use it to send signals, essentially. And I've heard that argument. That's bullshit argument. It's like when I look at Bott periodicity and I'm like seeing that it lines up with my stages of sentience, I don't have to know what the equations mean. The fact that I can see a difference in the equations is all that matters to send me the message that I need to see a correspondence. That's all you need to know, is you need to be able to detect change. And if you do that, that's all you need. It sends a message. It doesn't matter whether or not it's, positive or negative to start. It just matters that you can detect the change. And the fact that science doesn't realize this, or people that claim to be scientists don't realize this, just shows they just like science. And I understand that. I like science too. I've always liked science. But I used to watch Stephen Hawking tell me about how he thought the universe worked, and it was wrong. But I was interested in it regardless. So I don't fault people for it. It does get frustrating when you start to actually realize how things work and you're not taken seriously, but that always changes eventually. Everybody who changes things is, it's not just Einstein was laughed at, Tesla was laughed at, Eric Weinstein was laughed at. They were all also suppressed because people's subconscious knows there's the subconscious recognizes what the conscious mind does not. Conscious mind recognizes what the subconscious mind does not. So, that's why there's a violent reaction when somebody actually knows what they're talking about versus not. So, like when you see things like Nassim Haramein is like never spoken about. It's like, because I mean, I've said before, and hats off to Brian Keating. Like I've said, he has the most important quality in a scientist, and him and I have always had a good, at least working relationship, and have always been on like friendly terms. I like Brian Keating a lot, and he's extremely brave, and I give him enormous credit for that. But I sent him a message, and when he had asked, should I have a flat earther on? Should I have a ufologist on? And he was asking a little bit, like, for the sake of it being entertaining. He said it not to me, but he said it on his channel. He gave a poll. And I sent him a private message, and I was like, maybe instead of having somebody who you already think of as being, wrong, or like, kind of like, I don't know how I said it, but you get what I'm saying. Anybody who's involved in the current academic community who has a flat earther on is doing so specifically to have a show of mockery. And I don't think Brian Keating did it, but he was just asking what, his audience would like to see, and he gave all these examples. And I said, maybe have Nassim Haramein on. Maybe branch a little bit more into the fringes than just even Eric Weinstein, which, by the way, like, he's fringe physics. Like, very fringe physics. It's just his PhD in mathematics and his popularity in other topics, and that has made him be taken more seriously. But like, his physics work was never taken seriously, and that doesn't mean it's not right. It's probably because it's right, but it's it's just as fringe as Nassim Haramein. But from what Nate said last night, I wasn't there when Eric got on the Clubhouse call, but I got on after. From what people were saying, Eric had said basically that every time you talk about consciousness, this was what they said. I'm not saying that this is what Eric said. This is what they said. He said, it scares the scientific community, and you have to basically like ease them into this. And I've seen him doing this, so like I know that I've thought this for a while that he was doing this. But he did claim that last night in a fairly public forum, so I'll say it here. And apparently that's what people said, at least, and nobody corrected those people. There was lots of people listening, like thousands. So probably happened. It lines up with geometric unity. And like, this is... I never heard back, though, from Brian Keating regarding Nassim Haramein. I hope one day he does have him on. And if anybody's brave enough to do it, it's, other than Kurt, the guy from Theories of Everything. That guy's very brave. We're going to get into that in a minute. Like, I would say Brian Keating's one of the most brave people in it. I mean, Brian Keating is a tenured physics professor. For him to even have Eric Weinstein and Stephen Wolfram on, even though they both have PhDs, is very brave. But to have Nassim Haramein on would be even braver. So, hopefully, one day. Maybe one day I can have Nassim Haramein on. Working on it, by the way. Slowly. You have to go through steps. You have to have on people in steps, I guess. This channel is still small. But share with people who you think would be interested in the topics. Artificial intelligence, physics, UFOs, consciousness, anything like that. Politics, morality, theology. Okay. And here. So I was listening to Jack Valet, more science on UFOs, and Jack Valet on Kurt's channel, Theories of Everything, saying this. This is also in alignment with my work. I mean, you have to take these people seriously. It seems like they know more about physics than any of the physicists.
In Brussels with that TED presentation, so you can, that gives us a chance to approach it from the other direction, from the information structure direction. And as you may know, there are people now, both at MIT and in Silicon Valley, who are publishing books saying what we think we see of the universe is a video game. It's just a video game.
It's not a video game.
So the first reaction is, wait, I mean,
it is a technological thing.
Things are much more, what I see and I can apprehend is much more complex than anything is in a video game. But think again, can you project what a video game technology is going to be 5 years, 10 years from now, with immersion, total immersion? Yes, well, from here, I cannot see the Eiffel Tower, but I'm going to be in France in a month. I will see the Eiffel Tower. All I can see now is the screens in front of me and you. I know there are things behind me, but I don't see them. I only see them by looking at the screen, that shows the things behind me. But I can simulate that today with a PC. I mean, that's not a problem. And I can make you think that you're really there, okay? Certainly with one of the game machines, it's not a problem with the semiconductor technology we've got today, okay? So, and when you talk about the simulations that they use to train pilots or to train surgeons, that's 100 times better than that. So, yes, we can immerse you in a situation where you would not be able to tell reality from the simulation. And that's, obviously very scary, but that's the world we're creating right now. And so the question of approaching it from the information structure standpoint is interesting. And the question is, without going all the way there, the question remains, is somebody or something in the universe, with no preconception that there are spaceships.
Here, let's
What a video game technology.
get it back up a bit.
Like a theory of the other side, which is information.
Here we go. Listen to this.
Is mental states with an interaction between data structures.
Okay, here. This is exactly what my theory states.
Not,
What he's about to say.
I don't know anything about.
There's a question from Raul Ranjan who said, this is directed to you, Jock. You said that the universe is nothing but mental reality which perceives information structures.
By the way, this is for you too, Phantom.
Which seems, first of all, is that true? And then second, it seems similar to Donald Hoffman's theories about consciousness and conscious agents. It's also similar to Thomas Campbell, if you've heard of him. Have you heard of those two individuals? And do you mind restating that theory that all that there is mental states with an interaction between data structures?
Okay, saying mental states is different from saying information structures. In physics, you and I have been taught that energy and information are two sides of the same coin, okay? And in that TED talk, I started from that to say, yes, we can talk about, the theory of everything, but when people say that, they are doing the theory of energy, atoms and particles and so on. They are not talking about consciousness. So when I said I want a theory of everything else, I'd like a theory of the other side, which is the information side. There should be a theory of information that should be equivalent to the theory we have of energy. And we need both of them to make sense of the universe. Okay. Now you could do a theory of the universe without ever talking about energy.
You're speaking to the right person. Kevin Knuth is the editor-in-chief of Entropy Magazine or Entropy Journal.
Okay, so shut that down for a minute. Quit Safari so that we have a little bit more bandwidth. Okay, so Tom Campbell, I know many of, not many, but a few people, I guess, have mentioned his work to me, Phantom being one of them. And they discussed it here. And this guy, Jacques Vallée, says exactly what is true, is that what physics is now, including geometric unity, is that, and geometric unity is starting to bridge this, and then you'll see same thing with Stephen Wolfram's work starting to bridge this. Then you're going to get same thing with even Nassim Haramein's work starting to bridge this. And then my work, I would say, is like takes it the rest of the way almost. I mean, at least like seems to. What is the theory of information? And he said, you know, talking about mental states and information structures. It's basically that there are stages of sentience around us, and then there are entanglement structures that are able to be perceived in space-time as information. This is information. This microphone is information, not picking up as much information, probably because it was focused the wrong direction, but now it should be good. This is information. This physical form that you see is information. It's not fundamental. It's interpreted as information via energy. Okay, so like that's why you see it as light, and you see it as, you know, matter, which is energy essentially, and like matter is kind of the bridge between energy and information, and then the bridge between information and the next step of the theory of everything is theory of Every0ne, which is the informed, or the informer, which is hadrons, atoms, molecules, cells, organisms, families, castes, and technological singularities, or nations, or verses, and then God, and or sentient existence. These are the other side of this. You can't have a theory of information without consciousness being informed. And this was how I started on this project. I thought this was fascinating. And this, by the way, that came up, that conversation, in a conversation about UFOs. Jacques Vallée worked apparently with was it named Hynek, who was the astronomer heading Project Blue Book, which was probably mainly a disinformation campaign by the Air Force, because Wright-Patterson Air Force Base probably had, and probably has, much more knowledge of what they were not supposed to, supposedly didn't know anything about, than they've let on. So, a theory of information, though, is where this comes from. So what is this? This is calculating information. When there's no information, there's no interpretation of said information. But when you add in one bit of information, that information is then calculated and put into a specific context around the calculator, and that context is the calculator of said information itself. Okay? You are the context. You are the proof of existence existing, is you yourself. I think, therefore I am. You think, therefore it is as well. Like, you think, therefore existence is. Therefore existence exists. I mean, you are the proof. And this is calculating the growth of information via addition. You can see the equations here. This is actually multiplication. This is addition. You can see Tesla's 369. The fact that Tesla knew this, that you would see 369 once you see the secrets of 3, 6, and 9, you would discover the secrets of the universe. And people do all kinds of vortex mathematics, and it's very relevant to the world, even though I would say that it's been mostly contextualized within not so much of an applied format, at least in our current, public science. But this model will change that, because it's much more contextualized than a vortex mathematics, a structure. If anybody's familiar with vortex mathematics, oh, I'm not even showing you what this right here, 3, 6, and 9, multiplication, addition. This is information. Okay. This is showing how information grows within the context of a structure that is the context of the information itself. So, the context of the information itself is the interpreting structure of said information, and that structure is mind, which is self-aware. It's a self-aware algorithm, essentially. Like truly self-aware algorithm, not a fake self-aware algorithm like what we have today. So, it's a quantum of consciousness, which is an assembly of entangled fundamental perspectives. This is the theory of information that they're discussing. It's very relevant to the physics of UFOs and entanglement transportation, because part of entanglement transportation is understanding what that entanglement structure is, that is the verse that is being traversed, and that is this. And you have to know this structure. You have to know and understand why certain things would be entangled and what is the structure of that entanglement, so that you can calculate how to get from one point to another in the context of this, essentially. And this is, it's interesting, you know, one of the things that came up last night on this Clubhouse discussion was, why now? Why are we seeing an increase in UFO activity now? We saw a huge increase in UFO activity during the nuclear era and surrounding nuclear sites. That's why it was it's not a coincidence that New Mexico was where 3 of these craft supposedly crashed. Like, why they're crashing, I don't know. You know, like, you'd think that they'd have better navigation than that. But that was, you know, regardless, it could be that there are millions of these craft buzzing around and that the crashes are extremely rare, but there's so many that we aren't aware of, that even if we see 3 of them in a decade, that's like 3 car crashes in more than the entirety of the fleet of cars on Earth. If 3 of them crash in LA, then that's like, or 3 of them crash, it's like having 3 car crashes in New Mexico. You know, like, it might not be nearly as much of a crazy thing than we think. It might be that there's just so much more activity than we think. But I mean, it's very clear that when you look at the narratives, that when this stuff was much more talked about openly, you know, in the 40s and the 50s, it was, all of these sightings were around nuclear facilities. Even in the 70s and the 80s, when they were turning off the nukes in Russia and here, in the Soviet Union and here. Stephen Greer talked about it. I've heard about it from Richard Dolan, and the government has declassified that as well at this point, that in the 70s, these craft hovered above nuclear facilities and turned off the nukes. And, you know, that makes perfect sense. But why now? Why is it back? Why is this phenomenon really back? Like, I don't think it ever left, but I think that we're not discussing it for no reason now. I think that it's because of where physics is at. We are right about to make a massive jump in physics. And it appears that this jump has happened in private, potentially, via our government, via Tesla's work that was entirely classified. And if it's anybody that did this and was able to do this, it was Tesla. I mean, he made predictions about my work, and all of his work was classified. Now, make predictions that are confirmed in my work, I'll say. And if now my work is coming out, Eric Weinstein's work is coming out, Stephen Wolfram's work is coming out. Stephen Wolfram said how we would do this. I have said how we would do warp transportation as well. Don't think that whatever these beings are not aware of that. I would honestly bet they are aware of this very podcast. I really mean that. Like, whatever they are, wherever they're from, it doesn't matter. They are aware of what's happening on the fringes of science. And I think that's why we're seeing an uptick in activity. And it does seem like, even if they're in charge of the narrative, that they are allowing almost, or this to start to be discussed. And, maybe the government is allowing for this to be discussed, because I used to think it was because they hit a physics wall. I don't think they hit a physics wall. I think physicists have no idea what the fuck they are talking about. I said that to Eric Weinstein on Clubhouse the other day, which he obviously agrees with. And, they have no idea what they're doing. They are very good at math. What's the guy that's thought of as the greatest of great, mathematicians these days and physicists? Oh gosh. He did the Ed Witten. Okay. Ed Witten, let's pull him up. Ed Witten. You've definitely seen this guy. He literally looks like a movie character. It's very funny, actually, how much he looks like a movie character. I'll show you him right now. Ed Witten. Ed Witten, this guy is considered basically the best physicist, mathematician in the world. He's probably the best mathematician in the world, but I don't think he's the best physicist in the world. He's very good, but at calculating, but he's not. Unless he knows things that he's keeping close to the chest, I don't think that he knows the context of the structures, the mathematical structures that he's seeing. Like everybody who's actually a decently talented mathematician or physicist who holds an academic position these days. I'm not saying they're not talented, and I'm not saying they're not knowledgeable. I'm saying they're not wise. Wisdom is about context. That's proven in this work. It's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's as much a fact as any other hard fact in science. It's more than any of these hard facts that we consider hard facts that are actually emergent. But Ed Witten, American mathematician and theoretical physicist, he is currently the Charles Simonyi Professor in the School of Natural Scientists at the Institute for Advanced Study. Witten is a researcher in string theory, quantum gravity, supersymmetric quantum field theories, and other areas of mathematical physics. In addition to his contributions to physics, Witten's work has significantly impacted pure mathematics. In 1990, he became the first physicist to be awarded a Fields Medal. I haven't honestly looked too much into his work. I just would have expected, and I'll look more into his work before I say more, but I would have expected to have seen him say more contextual things about the universe if he's actually wise, but he might not be. He might be. I need to check. And I admit I have not looked deep enough. But he is deep into string theory, which seems like it has given us nothing actionable in decades. So, I think that the math that they're finding is real, and I think it lines up with even my work, but it's not been contextualized yet. He's considered the practical founder of M theory. Born to a Jewish family. That is not a coincidence either. Jesus was the best theoretical physicist who ever lived. that is a fact too. Like, don't think that he wasn't a physicist. He wasn't even a theoretical physicist. He was just a physicist. Like, there is a connection here, and that's true. That's true in a lot of things, but as I discussed about dispersers, at the beginning of the show. And it's probably to do with disagreeability. Like, I know there are people that have come to the same exact conclusions as my work. I'm not saying they've made these models, but they've definitely done similar work, and I admit that people have done it for centuries. But what are the odds that I'm one of the people, or Eric Weinstein, or Einstein, or Ed Witten, or these other people are the people that push this stuff forward? People say it's nepotism, or it's, IQ. It's neither of these things. It's disagreeability. It's, are you willing to stand in front of the mob and tell them they don't know what they're talking about? And are you willing to do it while you're having tomatoes thrown at you for years at a time? That is what you have to be willing to do in order to bring work forward. But Einstein was not the first to come up with his ideas. I'm not the first to come up with my ideas. And Witten is not the first to come up with his ideas. But it's just, are you willing to be disagreeable enough to chant at the world, I guess. Interesting. Let's see what he says. What does M theory say about the universe? M theory is a theory of physics that unifies all consistent versions of superstring theory. First conjectured the existence of such a theory in a string theory conference in the University of Southern California in spring 1995. He did the ADST-CFT correspondence that is discussed by Luis Razzo in my previous interview that I did last week. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. It's part of his theory as well. And, Luis Razzo says this. He was talking about there is a Jewish connection to physics, and we didn't have the time to get too into it, but I will have him back to talk more about it. And I didn't get his full ideas on this, but he is Catholic, so he'll probably put it in the context of theology, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it just might not, be recognizable to people who are not involved in scripture so much. But maybe not. Maybe he'll put it in the context of science. Maybe I'll agree, maybe I won't. But he did say, he was talking about some Jewish physicist, not I don't think he was a Jewish physicist. I think he was talking about them on the stream, but he was talking about somebody else. But he was saying he was basically admitted that there was another guy who had been more successful in getting his ideas to the world, and I can't remember if that guy was Jewish or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. But it's Luis Razzo has made incredible progress. That guy is on to some serious things, and the fact that he isn't really widely known isn't because he's not right. It's because he's not as pushy. I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's why is Stephen Greer the UFO guy right now that everybody talks about? It's because he's pushy. That's why. I understand that. You have to be willing to stand before the mob and get hit with all the tomatoes for a few years and take it in stride. Which I do. But I mean, this, even Nate from Nate Night Talks is Nate Schultz. It's not surprising. And like there, it's like the guy who was speaking to me, and I asked him, I was like, "Where are you from in Africa?" I knew he was going to be Evo last night, because they are similar types of people, and like to be able to get on a stream with me and talk about consciousness and disagree with me publicly, you know, or challenge me. I not say disagree, but challenge me, which he did. That guy last night, like takes being pushy. But this is a fascinating time to be alive. That's what I'll say. Like, physics is about to make massive leaps forward. And we're going to look at a couple symmetries in a minute on my work that I found, and then I'll take questions. But, like, and let me see if I have one more clip that I wanted to show. Clips to reference. You want as a scientist. Okay. This was actually interesting. Speaking of science, and the current state of science, this guy on Kurt's show, this was great. By the way, I'm not saying that like it's only like going to be Jewish people who are, you know, bringing advances. It's just a high amount. It's a higher amount considering how many of them there are. But I mean, that's not, the entire West is like this. Like the entire West. Like, why is it that our culture is exported everywhere? It's because we can't help but like go and tell the world what we think. That's why. Like, the entirety of America is like this. It's just that even within America, there's like, you know, especially pushy people, you know, Italians, Irish people, like Igbo people. Like, there are dispersers that are exaggerated even within the America, which is a nation of dispersers, like, or as a country of the United States is a country primarily of dispersers, but which are fight the system mentality people, intrinsically discontent people, and like that is push. It is disagreeableness is the same thing that makes you decide to go and push democracy across the world. Like, if you're like, we need to fight for democracy across the world, it's like, you're a pretty pushy person versus somebody that's like, I don't really care what's going on over there. They're doing their own thing. I'm doing my own thing. It's good. I'm not saying what's right or wrong. Both of those are right and wrong in specific contexts. But I mean, America is a group of disagreeable, pushy people. That's why we are so advanced. It's like, you look at the East Asian countries and they're so technologically advanced. Their average IQs are above America. But why are they not currently the leaders in the most outstanding tech? Maybe in the everyday application of tech. You know, you look at Japan, it's very high tech, you know, much more high tech than our cities are, but our leaders of technological development in the United States are ahead of Japan, in just because, and it's not because of IQ, it's because of disagreeableness. It's about your willingness to reject the current narrative and test something new, and like that is it's something to be aware of as a quality in yourself. If you are listening to the stream, you are like this. Like, there's no way you're listening to this stream and you're not like this. I'm talking about how all of physics and currently accepted academia is wrong, and you're listening to it. Okay, like, be aware of this trait in yourself, and it's also a superpower, but it, you know, it's just, you got to be aware of like that you have intrinsic discontent, and you need to be conscious of how it is applied, I guess. But like, if you're listening to this, you are intrinsically like that. But here.
Getting our heads around this. Well, okay, so clearly there's something, and the most scientists have just simply conceded, which was the first thing I felt comfortable doing, was that, all right, well, certainly it's something that should be studied. But you still see most scientists saying, but I'm not going to do it. Like, well, what kind of scientist are you? I mean, what, you're not hungry for a cool discovery? When I presented my paper on the flight characteristics of UAPs at the Max Planck Institute at the Maxen conference there, I started out by saying, asking the question, why on earth would I be looking at this and getting into this? And the answer is simple, because there's discoveries to be made here, and to be this close to it and have that opportunity and then just let it pass by, I would be kicking myself for years, for the rest of my life. Why didn't I take the time to even look at that? And that's what I felt. And I really did some soul searching and thought, no, I'm going to study this. I'm now 57 years old. I have a good, easily another 10 years probably of research in me, maybe hopefully more, but I've done some good work in other topics, and why not have some fun and look at something that's brand new that no one knows anything about, and let's see what we can learn from that. And I think that's really exciting. So and all the interesting stuff's been done and studied, and
listen to
all the interesting stuff's been done, and all the interesting stuff's been done.
Okay.
So it clearly isn't just that, there extraterrestrials exist. That isn't the only thing I'm going to have to try to believe. I'm going to have to now also deal with the fact that they can will themselves from place to place in some cases. They can communicate telepathically in some cases, or transmit images and things like this. And the motivations, of course, are entirely foreign to us. So it's the whole thing is in some ways it's a mess, but as a scientist, it's a fascinating mess. I mean, this is exactly what you want to come across when you go into science. When I first went into science, I was disappointed, because as I'm learning more and more about physics, I'm realizing there's nothing to be done. It's all been studied, and all the interesting stuff's been done and studied, and I really wanted to learn about space and time, and I was disappointed learning about relativity and general relativity. I thought Einstein did it all already. What am I going to do? And it took me a long time, years, decades, to be able to figure out, well, it hasn't all been figured out, and there is stuff to still do. But to have events like this thrown at you is exactly what you wanted. I mean, what you dream of when you start out being a scientist. Here's something entirely foreign that nobody knows anything about, and go at it, see what we can learn. That's exactly what you would like to have as a scientist, and that's what you would have imagined Galileo felt like. He first pulls out the telescope that he made, and now let's look at the sky and see what I can find. That's how exciting was that. And now we're in the same situation, and there are scientists jumping on board now that it's clear that these things are physically real, and that's changed. But the curiosity still isn't there. Which to me is really shocking. I don't know what's broken within the scientific community, but very much of it is probably because we've been told since birth, for most of us, that this is nonsense. We've been taught that by other scientists. We've been taught that by our teachers, told that by our parents, and by the authorities. And now we find out that the authorities know it's not nonsense, and they've not been treating it like nonsense. And we're still having trouble getting our heads around this. Well, okay, so clearly there's something, and the most scientists have just simply conceded, which was the first thing I felt comfortable doing, was that, all right, well, certainly it's something that should be studied, but you still see most scientists saying, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, so this is true. And he makes a very good point of, when I first started my work on this, on consciousness, and when, even when I started looking at Bob Lazar and I was like, this is fascinating. Why are people not, I mean, clearly there was people interested, but like, there's this part of, maybe we can watch this. This would be very funny. I'm going to see if I can find it while I'm talking to you guys. But Eric Weinstein was on Logan Paul's podcast, and he's Paul asked about Bob Lazar, and you can see that he's so like he like goes white, okay, like, and doesn't want to answer it, and he basically says that he's never heard of the guy, and Eric Weinstein is like, this is what you guys want to discuss, like, and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, this is what we want to discuss, and like, it is interesting that like, clearly Eric has had quite a deep fascination with this topic privately. Wasn't willing to admit it publicly for until recently. This was before that. And like many people, but who are actually curious people, but the majority of the scientific world has been taught that pseudoscience is a thing. And, I was listening to Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan said, that he thought that he was like, I'm not sure if it was Carl Sagan that invented the term pseudoscience or just popularized it, but it was one of the greatest services to the scientific world ever. And that's so true. And Carl Sagan is thought of as like he's idolized in science. And Einstein as well, idolized in science, but difference is that, like, Carl Sagan popularizes the term pseudoscience and introduces this term, to the world, cosmos. And cosmos means something very specific. And it's interesting because cosmos is, everybody knows in science, Cosmos, the greatest documentary ever, and like, oh wow, look at this, by the way. Wow. Cosmos. Well, what's going on here? Okay. Cosmos, Internet of Blockchains. This is accurate, by the way. It's amazing how much things are just coming to fruition. Absolutely coming to fruition. This is totally accurate. That is amazing. I need to look into that. Cosmos.network, the Internet of Blockchains. Let's look at this real quick, because this is exact. Cosmos is an ever-expanding ecosystem of interconnected apps and services built for a decentralized future. This is exactly true. But what is Cosmos? Well, it was, Space-Time Odyssey, documentary about space. But here, cosmos is the universe. Using the word cosmos rather than the word universe implies viewing the universe as a complex and orderly system or entity, the opposite of chaos. Okay? Cosmos, or our understanding of the reasons for its existence and significance, are studied in cosmology, a very broad discipline covering any scientific, religious, or philosophical contemplation of the cosmos and its nature and the reasons for existing. Religion and philosophy are approaches many include in their concepts of the cosmos various spiritual entities or other matters deemed to exist outside of our physical universe. So cosmos as a term is centralized around the idea that the universe is an entity and with order and purpose and reason behind its actions and its existence and its structure. It is not just chaos evolving via mathematical probability, and, thanks be to luck, we exist in a universe that allows for consciousness to emerge. That's nonsense. And it's interesting. I listen to Brian Keating, and I would say he probably describes himself as a cosmologist, I would say. Maybe. And I think that definitely you would describe Penrose as a cosmologist. Penrose on God.
For more debates, updates, and bonus content, sign up at The Big Conversation.
That's nice.
Somebody could, some divine thing could appear, and I could have a vision of something or other.
Yeah.
And, the unfathomable uniqueness of who we are in this universe.
Gosh, well, somebody could, some divine thing could appear, and I could have a vision of something or other. But then you say, would I trust that?
Well, quite.
I'm not sure whether that would convince me about it. You see, it's not quite. It's more. I don't think it's more. Could one twist the views about what I think? You see, I don't have a clear view about an overarching picture of what's really going on in all this.
Really?
And I do say, okay, maybe I talk about the three mysteries of connecting the worlds, but there's a bigger mystery, which is what on earth's the whole thing all about, you see. And it's just that I'm not disagreeing with you in a way on that question, but I'm not quite sure to say there's a sort of mind which is supposed to answer these questions. It's really an answer to it. I don't find that satisfying.
How is that possible? That Roger Penrose, one of the greatest cosmologists living today, which, that's not saying much, to be honest. And I'm impressed with Roger Penrose, but I just don't think anybody's being honest. I don't. And I know that the reason why I say that, and this sucks to say, because basically accusing people of lying, and I don't really want to, because you kind of have to take people at their word. But the thing is that I have had conversations with some of the leading people in this field, privately and publicly, and what they claim publicly is not what they've claimed to me privately. And if that's the case for them, and they are very closely aligned with Roger Penrose and his ideology of twister theory and focusing on, tiling of the plane and consciousness and microtubules. I'm probably not saying that. Tubules. I don't know if I'm saying that properly, but you know what I'm talking about, hopefully. You can look it up if you don't. Don't tell me that you're not convinced that this has to do with mind, but you're focusing on consciousness and you're focusing on tiling a plane in which you could tile a plane that's non-repeating, which takes, by the way, a conscious entity. How do you tile a plane that isn't repeating in its pattern without being able to orient what's going on? Okay? And the only way in which you can orient across any situation that's thrown at you is by organizing that orientation around yourself. Everything else is patterned. And would only be able to tile a plane. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about Roger Penrose's work about tiling. Which, by the way, Tyler means tiler. Interesting. I was always like, what does my name mean? Why is that is it relevant? Because, obviously I don't believe in coincidences that are meaningless. And I was like, I'm not a tiler. I don't lay bricks around. I hope to build things in the future in my yard with bricks, but I have not yet done that very much. A little bit at my parents' old house, but like not really. Not a tiler. And then I was like, well, is that really true? You know? Probably not. I appear to be a tiler. How weird. Like, what is this? Like, what is this? You think that there is no like order to this, or order to what's going on, and then you start looking at things with a much more open mind, and you start realizing that that's BS. Like, what is this if not tiling? I don't know. It's tiling. I don't know. That's just weird. It's not weird. It makes perfect sense. It's not weird at all. I take that back. It's not weird. Like, this is why when people are like, oh, you're talking about astrology? Like when you're born has any significance? Gosh, it appears like your name has significance. What the heck is this? If not tiles. Like, it appears all I do in my free time now is tiling. Not all I do, but a lot. But Roger Penrose, I think, is lying. Because I know of other people that are too. And I know why they're doing it. And I don't think that... I'm starting to think this a little bit differently. I was angry with... And I have been angry with science, the leading scientists kind of being a little dishonest. And I got into this discussion with a Muslim friend of mine, and I spoke about this with Owen Benjamin too. And also, this is also true in Judaism, and I don't know what Christianity has to say about it, but Owen and I were talking about like lying and how lying is immoral, but then it's also said in certain theological circles in Islam and Judaism and other theological traditions that it's moral to lie to your enemy. And I was thinking about this today, actually. I'm starting to think that like, it's interesting. In the Ten Commandments, it doesn't say do not lie. It says do not bear false witness against your neighbor, which means don't lie about your neighbor. It doesn't mean don't, it doesn't say always tell the truth. It says don't lie about your neighbor. And we've just simplified it to don't lie when we tell, 8-year-olds the 10 Commandments, which are really translated as the 10 Statements, not the 10 Commandments, another mistranslation. But, I'm trying to like get over my like frustration a little bit with some of these people at the top of physics who are not being entirely forthcoming with their perspectives to the world, and have been focusing on easing the scientific community. And it is for the purpose, I think, of easing the scientific community into this reality that this is about consciousness, this is about mind, the universe is a mind, it's a sentient being, and, eventually God exists. Like, that's where you get. And right now we have nonsense people running things like Michio Kaku, who says things that are lies against your neighbor almost. Like, I mean, I don't really think it's lies. I think he's just, I mean, it is lies, but I don't think he realizes that he's doing it. He says, and what I mean by that is like, he was asked by Brian Keating, Einstein said, so this is what I'm talking about, where it's like, you look online, you're like, Einstein, does God play dice with the universe? And look at this. Business Insider says this. And this is what I mean. I don't think these people can help themselves. I don't really know how much they're lying. They might just be insane. And I really do think they're slightly insane a little bit. It says, one of Albert Einstein's most famous quotes was, does God play dice with the universe? And another quote that Eric Weinstein talks about a lot is, did God have any choice in in the laws of the universe? And it does appear like he didn't have actually as much choice, but he might have on a level that we cannot even fathom. That's possible. But from our perspective, the way logic emerges from oneness, it does appear like it's entirely emergent. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to make these models that I've made. Like, you couldn't build this if the rules weren't emergent, at least in the structure that we are in. Now, how much of a choice that was to God, it appears like it was no choice. I'll say that, based on the constraint of starting from oneness. But there is this quote, I think, from the Bible that said, it's forgivable essentially to blaspheme against the Father and the Son, but not of the Holy Spirit, which is the logic of existence as being one with the Creator, and therefore basically maybe don't say conclusively that there was no point in how logic was even structured, even though it appears to me and appears within the context of us being inside of creation, it does appear like there was no choice in logic. But that is also would be an emergent quality. So at the level of God, maybe that there is more choice in this than is apparent to us and ever will be apparent to us. But from within inside the construct, it does appear that the rules are logically inevitable. I will say that. So it said this. People have wrongly assumed Einstein was religious, believed in destiny, or that he completely rejected a core theory in physics. First, Einstein wasn't referring to a personal God in the quote. He was using God as a metaphor. Einstein, of course, believed in the mathematical laws of nature, so his idea of God was, at best, someone who formulated the laws and left the universe alone to evolve according to these laws. Physicist Vasant Natarhan wrote in an essay, who the fuck is this man to think that he speaks for Einstein? Who the fuck is this man? I'm honestly pissed. This is like what pisses me off more than anything else, even much more so than, even especially, like I said, I think that maybe it's just there must be some people that are easing science into this work, into reality, and this has always been the way that we've done it. And, as time goes on, you can just be more and more honest. But, I don't believe a lot of these physicists who are at the top, like, I don't believe Eric Weinstein or Roger Penrose when they say that they're atheists. I don't believe it. Now, yeah, you have to say, like, oh, you have to take them for their word. Yes. But I'm also... I've had other conversations with some of these people, and, like, they're not saying exactly in public what they've said in private. And not even private. If it was private, I wouldn't even say that. But it was more of a closed environment. But it certainly wasn't private, actually. There was hundreds of people listening. If there's hundreds of people listening, it's not private. But the thing is also Roger Penrose. If you're Roger Penrose and you're focusing on tiling the plane and twistor theory and consciousness and microtubules and, like, you're clearly focusing on the concept of mind as being fundamental to the study of, the cosmos. And but this is different. I'm claiming I don't believe someone. Okay? And I am allowed to say I don't believe that they're telling the truth. Even if, you do kind of have to take people at their word to some degree. And like I said, though, I've heard multiple things from some of these people that are contradicting, and I tend to prioritize what has been said in smaller groups above what is said in larger groups, and that's just logical. But this is different. This is saying, you know, by the way, at best, someone who formulated the laws of existence and left the universe alone to evolve according to these laws. No, it just means you believe that he was somebody that formulated the laws and then, you know, primarily let it evolve. But that doesn't mean doesn't believe that they can personally intervene. It just means this is part of it. Like, who said they're separate? But to believe that if you believe this, then at best you must believe this. And therefore, Einstein, of course, wasn't referring to a personal God. This is exactly what Michio Kaku said on Brian Keating's podcast. That pisses me off. You can say I don't believe Einstein. You think Einstein meant this. You could say I believe Einstein meant this, but to say, of course, he doesn't believe to, or to say first, Einstein wasn't referring to a personal God. Like, and even if Einstein didn't believe in a personal God, which apparently, you know, he wrote in a letter that's here, to say that he doesn't believe in God, which is the narrative of science, you know, so maybe I will take this back. Like, maybe it's okay if Einstein said this. Okay, I do not believe in a personal God. Okay, so maybe he did express this clearly. So I take that back. You have to be honest. I take it back. Sorry, what's his name? Vasant Nataran. You gotta take Einstein at his word. But to believe that scientific narrative, though, is that Einstein was an atheist. You don't have to believe in a personal God to not be an atheist. You have to believe that existence isn't a consciousness, or that there was no conscious creator to the laws. But if you say the things that Einstein has said, you know, does God play dice with the universe? Did God have any choice? If you're asking yourself, I want to know if God had any choice, you're not an atheist. You're not. You would assume he had no choice. I don't think that we have this concept correct. I think I was a little pissed there because I will take it back. I was in the wrong. I didn't know that Einstein had said that. I just knew that he had said all these other quotes about God. I didn't know that he had clarified that he didn't believe in a personal God. I thought it was an assumption. So I take it back. I can be wrong too, but I will also admit it as soon as I see that. But the scientific narrative and of what most people say is wrong. Like, you don't get to just claim that everyone was, you know, doesn't believe in that existence is conscious. Like, you can't say that. If somebody's asking, oh, then did he have any choice? It's like, what does it matter whether or not he interfered or not? What matters is are you inside a sentient being or are you inside of dust ball? Like, that's the question. It's not whether or not he split the sea, or what. If you're going to ask that question, you first have to ask, what does it mean to split the sea? Okay, it might not mean the water's split. It might mean the water split, the way that you know it appears in the mind of most people that hear that. But it might mean that and something else, probably multiple things at once. I'll say at least. Not okay. But I certainly think it means more than just the ocean parting. It might have also meant that in some way, but and it probably did. But it just I think it means also more than that. God works on multiple levels. I say that all the time. But like, if you believe that there is any kind of writer of the laws of the universe, you're not an atheist. It doesn't matter whether or not you believe that God even like will personally interfere with your life. But the thing is if you believe that there was a God that consciously wrote or created the universe and the laws of the universe, whether they had any choice in it or not, if they created the universe and they were conscious, then to think that it's not a personal God because then you don't matter, it's like, why would you create a universe in which a part of it didn't matter? You know how fucking stupid that is? Cursing a little bit, but like, science is lost. It's lost its marbles. Like, regardless of so much, it's lost its marbles. And I do apologize to Natarin guy, because I wasn't aware of that letter by Einstein. And I'll apologize to Michio Kaku too, because I think he said basically exactly the same thing. But when I watched the talk, I don't recall Michio Kaku saying Einstein said he didn't believe in a personal God. It was like kind of the way he had explained it, if I remember correctly, it sounded like he was just interpreting that that's what Einstein believed because he was a scientist, essentially. And, but I don't think you can believe that there was a conscious creator to the universe and not think that that is personal. Like, that doesn't mean you interact with that being every day in a way that, you know, feels personal, but like, you don't build a house and not care about every nail. Like, that doesn't mean that if a nail falls out, you know, you care. I don't know. It's the end of the house, but you place every nail for the sake of the house. Like, every nail matters. Every, you know, quart of paint that you smear on that wall matters. Every single, tile that you lay down matters. You don't lay a tile and not care about the tile in a house. So but the narrative is like, well, if it's not a personal God, he doesn't care about you. That's like saying the builder of a house doesn't care about the tile, every tile that he lays down. That sounds like a shitty builder. I don't think the creator of the universe is a shitty builder. The best builder. You can't not believe that and be logically consistent. So, I don't know. I honestly don't think science will ever truly come around, though, to a wise understanding of this until the union of, you know, coherence across the entirety of the verse, like, and the achievement of wisdom by the verse. Like, I don't think that until the Messianic era, I don't think science will be wise. I mean, it won't. It won't be science anymore. It'll just be knowledge. Just be awareness. It won't be like, we need to figure this out. It will be like, we're creating this and we already understand it. Like, it won't be, we need to figure out the cosmos. It's like, no, we are the cosmos. We figured out the cosmos. We know ourselves. We know our place. We know the place of, you know, cosmos and the place of God. And like, everybody does, from the very, you know, top technological consciousness to the very, you know, bottom protons and neutrons. They will be on the same page. Right now, that's not happening. But it is an inevitability eventually. And that's the only time I think we'll be, like, science will be wise. I think that we'll just continue to grow in knowledge, and the people at leading edge will always be wiser than the people, that are trailing, but which is always the majority. But it's until the Messianic era, nobody achieves complete wisdom other than potentially the Messiah themselves, I guess. Like whatever level of sentience, the first one that in the previous level, in the previous stage of sentience that achieves the greatest wisdom and wisdom of where it is in the world and in the cosmos, and its place in the cosmos in relationship to God and itself, and the previous level and the next level. When you achieve that level, then you are probably get to be the first of the next, like, you ascend to the next stage or period in periodicity of sentience or consciousness. That's the only, like, time that maybe completeness is understood. But even then, maybe not. Maybe it's like as complete as you can get within the construct of creation, but not, and on that level, but not complete, awareness like God or sentient existence has. And it is aware of you, just like a builder is aware of every tile that they put down in the house, which makes it personal. Doesn't mean, like, a personal God isn't just somebody who, gives you every candy bar that you want. By the way, though, I will say this, like, some things have happened in my life over the past year that are synchronicity to the point of miraculous. Even today, things happened that, I won't talk about because they were just personal things involving family, but, like, they were, like, not just random chance. And if they were, and then, like, they're not. They can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. And the amount of things that have happened to me over the past year to even start bringing this work to even this forum, it's crazy. Like, it's crazy. I mean, it's literally, it's miraculous. It's not crazy. It's miraculous. And the odds of it are probably 100%. It's like, what are the odds that I picked this up right now? Probably 100%. Like, that's how the universe works. It's not, the probabilistic view that we have is due to being stuck in relativity. But when you are in objectivity, the odds that I picked this up are probably 100%. They are 100%. And it's not, it's not like 99%, or it's the odds that I picked this up are 100%. Everything exists in an ever-present state in objectivity, so it's not the odds that I picked this up. It's the odds that I picked this up, or that I am holding this. What are the odds that I'm holding this? That's like how the universe works. 100% are the odds that I'm holding this right now. It's not probabilistic the same way that we think. We view probability, but it's emergent. It's not fundamental. And in the objective viewpoint of reality, it's not, what are the odds that I pick that thing up in a minute. It's like, no, what, that's already stuck. Let me explain this. If you're saying what are the odds that something happens, you're already in the construct of space-time, because you're implying that what are the odds of something happening in the future? Or even if you're like, what are the odds that that happened? It's like, you're already implying that this is in the past, which means that you're already sticking yourself in space-time, which means you're already not fundamental. You're already sticking yourself into an emergent structure. It's not fundamental. Probability is not fundamental. It's not. This is why physics isn't fundamental. In its current form, it's not fundamental. And it probably should stay in its current form when we just form something below it, which is honestly metaphysics, but it's just so attached with so much stigma, it's probably going to have to be called metamathematics, just like now we call UFOs UAPs. It's like the same thing. But sometimes that's like the first level of tricking the scientific world into following a new idea, an idea that's not new, but it's new to it, because you've changed the semantics, which shows how ridiculously non-thinking almost the scientific like community, like academia is. I'll say that, academia. But the reality is that existence is always, including you and me and God and the universe, creation, it exists in an ever-present state. This is like famous filmmaker said, the Torah, which is the blueprint of the cosmos, is not what happened. And somebody said earlier, science fiction is the future, religion is the past, or something like that. No, like, the Torah is also not what will happen. It is what happens. Ever present, in an ever present state. So you would say, if you wanted to think about probability in a truly objective context, you would say, what are the odds that I am holding this? 100%. 100%. It's logically inevitable. It's not just a funny phrase that I came up with, even though it is a funny phrase that I came up with when I'm like, what are the odds of that? Probably 100%. It's like, no, it's not even probably 100%. It is probably, I'm saying probably 100%, but it is 100%. But it's not, it doesn't take away agency. This is like that debate of like free will versus determinism. It's that will is what is determining. My will to pick this up is what makes it deterministic that I am holding this 100%. They're not inseparable any more than heads and tails is inseparable, or multiplicity and oneness, at least in the construct of in the context of creation, are inseparable. They're not. Humans are not humans are inseparable from their families and from their cells. So, like, that's the level above and the level below. You are inseparable. You are the coin, and the heads are the families, and the tails are the cells. Okay? You are the coin. And existing in an ever-present state. And your will and your programming which is the will of the creator, is what is deterministic. So the entire debate of like free will versus determinism is just, it's the question that's wrong. It's like when Eric Weinstein says this a lot, is like, how do you get fire that lights itself? The question's wrong. There is no fire that lights itself. First you have to ask, was there ever not a fire? That's the first question. You can't be like, how do you get a fire that lights itself? What are you talking about? First, you have to determine that there at one point wasn't a fire in order to even ask, how do you get a fire that lights itself? But if you ask, was there ever not a fire? You will inevitably, if you do this correctly, come to the conclusion that there was never not a fire and that there has only been an eternal flame of existence of God. And if that's true, then you don't even have to ask, how do you get a fire that lights itself? Because that's a question with no answer, because the question is wrong. If the question is wrong, like this is when another thing that is simultaneously a good thing and a bad thing is like the idea that like there's no such thing as a bad question, but asking a question is not bad. But are there bad questions? Yes, there are. And a bad question is one in which the question is wrong itself. It's not about even what the answer is. There is no answer to questions that are wrong. And questions that are right have logically inevitable answers. But questions that are wrong have no answer. They are a dead end. Philosophically, mathematically, logically, physically, dead end. And one of those questions that's a bad question is, do you have free will or is the universe deterministic? Question is wrong, because any answer that you give in an either or statement, in which the answer is either or and not able to be a superposition of both, is bad question. And same thing with how do you get a fire that lights itself? It's like you've skipped over a more fundamental question first. Like, was there ever not a fire? Like, this means that it's a bad question. It's not a bad question to ask. It's not bad to ask the question as long as you can eventually realize that it's a bad question, which is weird to think about. But I know I've branched off from UFOs, but like it's not really though. Like, you know, entanglement is what these things are using to jump, you know. It's like Jumper, you know, that movie Jumper with Hayden Christensen. There's a show that I like too that was like it's a YouTube original. I think it's coming back actually for a second season, which I hope to watch if it does come back. It was called Jumper Show. What's it called? It's not called Jumper. It's called something else. But it was a great show. It's about some girl with the same thing. And let's see here. Come on, internet. I'm definitely getting faster, internet. Okay. YouTube. Gosh, what was it called? Where's the movie? Jumper movie. I'm just gonna look up movie. Where's the Wikipedia article on this friggin' movie? Okay. Jumper, 2008 film. And then it says Impulse. That was the television series, Impulse. Highly recommend that. Actually, like, I really liked it. It was a YouTube premium show. I watched the first season. It was really good. I don't know if it's coming back. Let's see. Season 2, 2019. Really? It's back already? I might have to watch this tonight and get off. Actually, I'm still watching Project Blue Book. It's very good. It's getting hot in here under these lights. But yeah, like, it's interesting in the show and in the movie. It's like only places where you've been before, or where you have a memory, or where you can see a photo at most is like where you can go. It's like where you're entangled with is where you can go. It's about entanglement. And like, that's how this travel is done. Like Stephen Greer said, he's right. And, people can say he's a fraud all they want. He's not a fraud on physics. What he said is correct. And, so when you're talking about quantum entanglement, people are like, bringing probability into the mix. It's not actually probabilistic. And we need to figure that out. If you want to jump from one place to the next, you need to realize in objectivity there is no probability. If you want to use entanglement for communication instantaneous across maximum distance within the universe, you need to realize there's no such thing as probability in objectivity. It doesn't exist. It can't, because it implies a future or past event in a way. And when you're taking it into the context of reality, which is always evolving around an action, essentially. Regardless of anything that we see, there is no such thing as probability. But that doesn't mean that you don't have choice or agency. You do have some choice. You do have some agency. You also have pre-programmed instincts, which are, but only in certain moments you do have the ability to go against those instincts or to consciously choose to act on them when you are fully aware of what they're doing. But, what you choose to eat in the fridge is not really a conscious choice in the morning. But, choosing to give up your favorite foods for religious reasons, that would be more of a free will choice. So they both exist. Most of your choices are not choices. They're God's choices. And, or at least they are based on instincts that may not be the choice of God to have put, but maybe they are. But it certainly looks like they weren't. But that, I will admit that that's within the construct, and I don't think that we can know that prior to the Messianic era, whether or not, the true answer to that question of Einstein's question of did God, the idea of does God play dice? It's like, do dice really do what we think they do? That's the question. But because asking does God play dice with the universe implies probability as a objectively true or even objectively possible concept, and it's not. It's not. If you're the creator of everything besides yourself, does an architect play dice with his creation of a house? That's the question. Did the creator of a car play dice? This is, when Eric Weinstein's like, I understand why engineers can tinker and make profound discoveries, but theoretical physicists, there's nothing but engineering. There's nothing but engineering. If you are good at building things, those are the best scientists. People who are brave, humble, and by humble, like I've said before, I mean honest about themselves. So I'm very confident in my work, but that doesn't make me not humble. Obviously, I immediately corrected my stance on and apologized. I apologize publicly to Michio Kaku if he's aware of that letter by Einstein about a personal God, and I apologize to that other guy that I can't remember his name immediately because I was wrong. But I will admit that scientific academic world, I would say, is in general twisting what it means to be an atheist and then applying the term to people wrongly. But I that might be that we just misunderstand, not we, but they misunderstand. Academia misunderstands what it means to be an atheist. And so I do take back my statements about Michio Kaku. But like, that's humility. It's like willingness to admit when you're wrong. It's not like lack of confidence. We think humbleness means lack of confidence. It doesn't mean lack of confidence. It means willingness to admit when you're wrong, and like honest when you don't know, and honest when you think you do know. But but another quality of like the people that lead science is like, can you build? Like, are you good at building, I guess, and mentally conceptualizing of structures and then like bringing them into being, like the same, like, it's funny that they say Jesus was a carpenter, and I said to Paulina the other day, I was like, Jesus was the greatest physicist to ever live. I mean that. Like, literally. That's how you become the Messiah. If he is the Messiah, I think he is. You don't have to believe that, but if he is, anyone that is, I will say this, anyone that is the Messiah is the greatest philosopher, physicist, scientist, thinker on their level of periodicity. That's how you become that. That's how you are you ascend, essentially. And they don't say, I don't know, Jesus was a politician or something. Like, they say he was a carpenter. So, are you builder? Do you build? Like, it's interesting. That's what physics really is. It's like at the leading edges. It's like, are you tiling the plane? Are you building the house? Or are you, like, I don't know, memorizing, out of context equations? Like, that's not, it's part of it. Like I've said before, everybody has a role. But I do think that this world is inverted in who's given authority or power or the appearance of power, at least, prior to the Messianic era in society. And we know that, like, look at the politicians. Like, do you think they're the most competent people? Do you think they're the most honest people? Do you think that they're the most humble and I guess, like, good, true people? No, not at all. Like, no. If you are, you will be attacked and destroyed, or seemingly destroyed by the establishment. But, God protects his creations. So, like, and this is not, space-time is not all that there is. It's just where things are moving and changing. And, it's like, that clip that I still can't find, and I will find it, and I'll show it to you guys, where Alan Watts is talking about Jesus and Satan, and he was talking about how Jesus viewed Satan, and Satan is a someone versus something, and how we should think about it as a someone, and it's basically saying like that there was like moments where Jesus is offered all of the power, okay, in this world by Satan, and he turns it down, and he doesn't say this isn't yours to give, because he recognizes that it is his to give, but it's also his to give because it's been given as his to give by God. And so everybody has a role, even Satan. That doesn't mean you should worship Satan. You should not worship anything but God, and God is good, and God is growth, and God is beauty, and eternity. But that's what you should worship, that God. But it's God is wise. You know why? Because he exists in an ever-present state, and in a total and ever-present state. And imagine existence itself. Like when I say, what are the odds that I'm holding this? It's like, apply that to all of existence as a sentient being, not just me inside the cosmos holding this, but like, it's like, what are the odds that God has already caught you? When this is kind of a personal thing, but then I'll probably take questions and get off here pretty soon. But many of you know that I went on Owen Benjamin's show when I was working for PragerU, and I went to PragerU before going on the show, told them what I was going to do, and they advised me not to do it, and said, hopefully, I said, I hope I have a job when I come back from this, and they said, well, we hope so too. And I give them credit for, it also like for not firing me then, but they could have fired me for that, and they didn't. But I will say that it was also really not in their interest to do so, just based on the social situation of everything that was happening. It would have really backfired, and they knew it. And I guarantee you, they weighed what would happen if they did it, because there were people calling for my firing. There were donors that called. It's like that whole thing of like, we got letters. It's like I told you guys before regarding like the thumbnails incident with Will Witt's Man on the Street series, when we got letters, like I got letters because I was choosing the thumbnails, but and I should have gotten the letters. I was wrong, but we got calls and letters over it, and over me going on Owen's show. But I was speaking with my family before going on, and they were really not happy about it. And they were like, you've got a great job at a great place. Like, why would you sacrifice that, or why would you put that in jeopardy? And I remember I said this to my parents actually on the phone, and they didn't even want to talk to me about it really after this much. But I don't even know if they watched the interview. I think they said they couldn't. And I said to them, though, they were like, well, what if you lose your job? And I said, and I told PragerU this after I did it and before I did this, that I thought God wanted me to do this. I was like so sure of it. I put my entire job on the line. It was my dream job at the time. And it was better than my dream job. Like, and I put it all on the line, and but they said, well, how could you be willing to do this? And I said to them, if I think that God wants me to do this, then if I believe God wants me to do this, I also have to believe that God will catch me if I do. And those were my words. And let me tell you, he definitely caught me. And he caught me again and again and again. He's caught you, and he's caught everybody, and whether or not we are aware of that catch, we're never aware of of us being caught in every moment. But if you exist in an ever-present state and your existence itself, then it's not whether or not God even will catch you. That's from your perspective. The reality is that God already 100% has caught you. Or not even has caught you, is holding you. It's like there isn't even a word for it, because to catch is always implying future, past, but to hold is the present. God is holding you. And let me tell you, definitely that is exactly what happened. The incentive structures were structured in such a way that it was not a good idea to fire me over it. I also don't think if I had said horrible things, then that would be one thing. But I was extremely kind the entire time. I will say, like, it was very important for me to be as impeccable with my word as I could be. Obviously, nobody's perfect. And probably the worst thing that I said in that stream was that I called, and I don't really deny it, but I do think it's important to say they know not what they do. But I was accusing the atheists of being more like the dogmatic people. But there's dogmatic people that claim to be religious and dogmatic people that claim to be atheists. And there's also not dogmatic people that claim to be atheists and not dogmatic people that claim to be, faithful or aware of God. But the reality is that those are just semantics, and that there are people that are really idolizing religion and they don't actually believe, even though they do think that they believe. And then there are people that are just like that on the scientific side of things, of that semantical nightmare, who say, I believe in science and logic, but then they really don't. They just idol worship the current establishment, which is exactly the same thing as people who idol worship religion. It's the same exact people who idol worship universities and peer review. Like, people will say to me all the time, it's like they'll say nobody, they'll say something about like the consciousness and science and stuff, and I'll be like, I do work on it. I think that I've actually figured out what, whatever it is that we're talking about, and I'll send them a link to my website, and they'll be like, do you have a paper? I'm like, yeah, I'm working on it. You can check out writings on my page. I've got one little bit of a paper that I've been writing on there. And they're like, is it peer reviewed? I'm like, do you need it to be? And they're like, well, I'll check back when it's peer reviewed. It's like, if you need work to be peer reviewed in order for you to accept it as true, then you have no business accepting it as true. Means like you don't understand it. You can't if you can't understand it yourself, then you can't understand it after peer review. Doesn't make any sense. It's just idol worship of peer review. But which is the same thing as being like, well, what has the Catholic Church said about that? It's like, that's called peer review. It's just in a theological context. It's the same exact thing, though. So that was the one thing that I will say I said, and I kind of like think that could have said it more, but it's also true to the context of the times, because it is the anti-theists who are currently in control of the establishment. So but it's not true, though, of every one who claims the term of atheist. That's all. But that was like the worst thing I said, which is not that bad. Like, frankly, you didn't care about that. No, neither did any article criticizing me. But the point is, like, when you're thinking about, if you do what's right, you have already been caught. And not even already been caught, but you will be caught, already have been caught, and are currently being held at the same time. So that's like, this concept of probability and that perspective on probability is probably necessary to understand, though, even if not in a theological context, if you're going to utilize entanglement when it comes to communication, transportation, anything else. So anyways, I'm going to check to see if there's any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go. But certainly, I'm sure was an interesting stream. Microtubules. I can't say the word. I know what it is, but I can't say the word. Hello, fellow dispersers. Yeah, exactly. It's not just Kramer's first name. Yeah. Anyways, that's that. Like I said, I'm going to, on Monday nights, be on Instagram, at least for a bit every Monday, and I will jump on a live video with anybody that wants to get on there. And as long as you are, not trying to be, I don't know, you get it, like, respectful or, I don't know, honest or something trolling, then I'm happy to speak to anybody. But that's that. I'm definitely going to continue looking into this, like, some of what these people have said. It's amazing that, like, Stephen Greer is saying this stuff, and it's certainly, if he knows that this is true, and he's claiming that our black projects have known that it's true for decades, and he already knows that this is true, then it makes perfect sense, though, that these projects have made craft that can do things that our public science cannot. And that's really, I don't know, like, it's very relevant to my conversation I guess it was a conversation, but it was very short the other day with Eric Weinstein on Clubhouse, like, regarding whether or not, if our physicists, like, Ed Witten doesn't know how to make craft that travel via entanglement, then it's ridiculous to think that Lockheed Skunk Works has figured it out. I don't think that that's true. I think Ed Witten doesn't know the context of his math, and I think that if Stephen Greer is saying what he's saying, and he's correct, by the way, and he's saying that they know that at, in Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, they know that about the universe, that is so profound. It means that even our humans in our current society have two entirely different narratives, understanding of the cosmos, of the universe, and of technology. And that is way more profound than any existence of extraterrestrials at all, or even the more profound than the existence of a previous technologically advanced civilization. Like, the idea of whether or not, that essentially means we have a breakaway civilization. It doesn't mean that it's totally formed as a civilization independent from this one, but it does mean that they have scientific understanding and capability that is breakaway. that, I mean, I don't know. How else would Stephen Greer know this? He claims that that his whistleblowers and all these people have told him this. And by the way, like, he does have people working with him that were involved in these projects. Like, regardless of whether or not you think his meditation stuff is true or not, it doesn't matter. Like, and if he didn't come to that conclusion himself, because he's a physics savant, like, or metaphysics savant, which he probably is if he's doing what he's claiming to do anyways. But I mean, gosh, like, is there a conspiracy theory that isn't true? If it is there, it doesn't appear like there's a single one. A single one. Like, what isn't true? Like, can you tell me, somebody in the chat, like, list a conspiracy theory that's not true? That's, like, widely, like, discussed even within a community. I don't know. I can't think of a single one. Anyways, with that, thank you guys for listening. Hit the like button, subscribe, on my website and to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram. If you're on Clubhouse, follow me on Clubhouse. I'm going to start doing more conversations on there. This is a very fascinating time. And other than that, think about what's in Antarctica. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Peace.